Welcome to the Writing with Purpose podcast, where I, Anna Woolliscroft, chat with fellow writers and outdoor enthusiasts about how we can embrace creativity and curiosity to live a life full of adventure that doesn't feel like hard work. I delve into exploratory conversations about my two loves in life, writing and nature connection, as part of my mission to share the wellbeing benefits they both bring. It's wonderful to have you here today. In today's episode, and following on from the Springtime Nutrition series, I'm chatting with Áine Harkin, an intuitive eating counsellor and wellbeing coach. We talk about positive nutrition, intuitive eating, the hunger scale, and how not to trigger diet mentality. All this along with eating tips for the festive season. Okay, welcome Áine Harkin to the Writing with Purpose podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to see you again and to have you on as a guest. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. So nice to be with you.
Great. Well, this episode actually follows on from a series that focused on nutrition that happened earlier on in the spring. And so this is going to be the first episode to go live after a short break of the series. So it's very apt that we're talking together just before Christmas as well, because that's going to be what we're hopefully going to talk about over the next few minutes. So you've been a personal trainer, a nutrition advisor, a yoga teacher, but now you concentrate your time working with clients as an intuitive eating counsellor and wellbeing coach, and you're based in the West Midlands. So you discovered intuitive eating after many years of yo-yo dieting yourself, so you have quite a story to share with this. So I'd love to kick off the episode on you if we can talk about talk a little bit about your journey and how you came to be an intuitive eating counsellor and wellbeing coach, and also what a typical day might look like for you and for with your clients.
Sure, yeah. So I'll take you back really. It all started, I suppose, my relationship with food started in my teenage years, that vulnerable age really. I just started dieting really, and it was stemmed from comparison to people around me, talk about dieting amongst my friends, what I'd see on TV, magazines, and it just really triggered something in me like, oh, maybe I could be smaller than I naturally am. And as you know, it doesn't take long to find a diet if you do any bit of research about dieting. So I just found the first diet I came across. I tried so many, I don't know what it was, the very first one, but it was, I would try one and then, it would work initially, then the weight would come back on and then I'd try another one. So it really did start, in my teenage years and went on for quite a long time. I just found myself stuck in that cycle really. And ironically really, what I actually found is as soon as I started dieting and controlling my behaviours around food, I all of a sudden started getting cravings that I never, ever had before. I was really preoccupied with food. I was always thinking about it, again, so much more than I ever had done. And also my weight was fluctuating, and that had never happened before. It was always pretty stable. I never really gave it too much attention, really. I was just quite active in school, and what I ate just kind of fueled my exercise and movement, really. So that was what I found at the time quite interesting, but obviously now I'm kind of at the other side of it. I'm like, oh, that was so interesting that as soon as I started dieting, all of those things started happening that I'd never had before, really. So there are obviously signs there, but at the time, I was just so stuck in it, really. So this went on for quite some time. So always felt preoccupied with food generally, just thinking about it a lot, always on to the next diet. And I always loved exercise, being active. School, PE was like I couldn't wait for that lesson to come round, and I was always doing after school activities whenever I could. So I knew I wanted to do something like that as a career and like past school and uni. So that's what I did really. So GCSE, went to uni, studied sport, PE and community studies. And that's when I suppose the penny dropped really. It wasn't actually until our very last lecture at uni that they brought previous students back in to kind of tell us what they'd done with their degree. And my degree was quite geared towards PE teaching. And I was like, I love PE, but I'm not so much sure about the teaching. So, and this lady came in and she was a personal trainer, and it really was that kind of penny drop moment. I thought, oh, okay, I do like working one-to-one with people, generally adults. I thought, okay, that's great. So I just kind of banked that idea and went traveling for a year. It's about a year when I worked and traveled for a year. And then I come back and just qualified as a personal trainer straight away. And I'm lucky, actually. Lots of my clients I still work with today on a personal training level that I've had done for years, and they've become kind of like friends, really. So I'm really lucky for that. I suppose thinking of my general day-to-day, I do coach people with the intuitive eating counselling side, but I also see some of my really lovely long-term personal training clients as well. Because I suppose it's all under that umbrella, we often have lots of conversations about food and relationship with our bodies. So it's all very much connected. So yeah, so that was stuff in the gym environment, which looking back now, I would say triggered dieting even more so. Being in that environment, definitely. Obviously, yeah, in the gym environment, people go to the gym for different reasons, but it can be very, there's a lot of goals around aesthetics, and a lot of clients were coming to me, 9 times out of 10, their goal would be around weight loss, and they may well have been on diets before and things like that. So it kind of threw me into that environment, and yeah, so it kind of triggered it a bit more for me as well, whilst working with clients, which was quite interesting. So my relationship with food it was still there in the background. I was still kind of very conscious about dieting and trying to control my weight really and body shape. And so I got to a point where I just knew it wasn't right because it had gone on for so long. There's lots of things happening, things like on a hormonal level, concentration, energy levels, immunity. There was just a lot going on that I just knew, okay, something's got to change here. And also, I suppose, working with clients as well around relationship with food and seeing their journeys as well. It was just all kind of coming together thinking, right, this has got to change. So I was really lucky enough to be introduced to a lovely lady, which I'm still really good friends with to this day. She's a nutritional therapist. And I had a consultation with her, and she introduced to me the idea of us all having a set point weight, so like a natural weight that our body's always striving to achieve. A bit like when I heard that lady about, she was a personal trainer, when I heard that, I was like, there was like, my shoulders relaxed. I just felt this, gosh, it was like a realization that I've been fighting against my set point weight for a long time. And it was just like, I realized it in that moment. So yeah, so she just kind of, I suppose, guided, she made it very simple for me, and we're just basically saying, you're not eating enough really for what your body's doing, and obviously you're just fighting against this range. I made changes, and very quickly, lots of changes started to happen very positively in terms of how I felt inside. So that went really well. Once that was all balanced, what I learned really is, because when I suppose been on the dieting cycle for such a long time, it must have been about 10, 12 years, that I then created a kind of habit cycle in my mind about dieting and cravings and overeating cycle. So I knew there was still a bit of work to be done, even though I knew I'd kind of rectified that balance. And that's when, so my research continued really. And that's when I discovered intuitive eating. And that's when it was like the cherry on top. And it was another, again, relief. I was all right, there's another way. So that, I would say, when did this happen? This was about 4 years ago. I went on an intuitive eating program myself. I worked through it and come out the other side of that. I thought, okay, this is really what I want to bring into what I do with clients, really. So that's really what brought me to specifically focusing on intuitive eating counselling. So it was really the cherry on top, and I felt like it was the right time to introduce it and focus on it.
Quite fascinating, and it's a story that's gone on for quite a number of years, which I think anybody that's battled a little bit with dieting and with their weight, it's not something that happens over a short period of time, is it? It's a long time, and you can fall into it. And So we met at a wellbeing event, didn't we, put on by Joe Plimmer, and you did a workshop on intuitive eating. I did a workshop on journaling, and I think I'd heard of intuitive eating before your workshop, but never really understood the concept behind it. And it was fascinating. And you went through something called the hunger scale, which I'll ask you about a little bit later on, which I thought was a really interesting way of kind of becoming more aware of what you're eating and how your body feels. Because I think when, not just with sort of food and exercise, but with a lot of sort of approaches and aspects, we kind of get disconnected a little bit from our body, and it's more about mind. And what you were saying about sort of the aesthetics of things, we see all of these people on TV and social media who've got the perfect body. And, I think there's still, although I don't know if it's as bad as it was, but there's still this sort of pressure to, look in a certain way almost. And I had a little chuckle inside when you said that you loved, PE at school, and I hated it. And it was one of my worst subjects. I was one of the smallest at school, and there wasn't many of us at primary school in the class. And, I got put in like a goal defence position in netball, and, the people that I was trying to defend against were like 2 heads higher than me, and we just weren't compatible at all, and I hated it. But I love exercise now, and I wouldn't say I've ever been someone that's gone on a diet as such, but I worked on cruise ships for a while, and I put 2 stone on while working on the cruise ship, and I was underweight anyway because I was quite stressed, and I had a bit of an issue with anxiety for a number of reasons before I went on the cruise ship. So part of that weight gain was probably to become my ideal sort of, what did you call it, the natural weight. And then I gained a little bit more. Some say, it's water retention working on ships. There's probably, I didn't have a great diet at one point. I think I lived for about 2 weeks on peanut butter and honey rolls because I just went off food completely. But how would you kind of know what your natural weight was? Is there a way of somebody being more aware of that? Yeah.
That's a really good question. It's quite a common question, actually, because it's definitely, I say, more of a feeling, because I always encourage my clients, if they can, to step away from the scales, just lean away from them and be more, say, intuitive about their choices, the choices around food, exercise, that's just overall well-being. And for me, I just knew it when I was there. I didn't have to step on the scales, and it's something I don't do anymore. It's more like a feeling. And also a really good sign that you're at your set point weight is actually your weight's not fluctuating much. You just feel, all right, okay, I've been here for a while. And before I started dieting, I realised, like my weight was just stable. I never stood on the scales. Again, it was that, like, I didn't have to think too much about it. It just felt very natural, and there wasn't any major fluctuations or kind of extreme in any way. And also the relationship to food is really key, because I found when I wasn't at my natural weight and my weight was fluctuating, it really did coincide with kind of cravings, overeating episodes, depriving myself of things. So it's definitely more of a feeling. And then, you can, if you have been at this kind of neutral feeling for a while, if you want to know, you can step on the scales and maybe like, okay, that must be it then. But it's not a kind of leading with the scales. It's more like leading from the inside out rather than the outside in, I'd say.
Yeah. And that's almost the opposite approach to what we see with, and I'm going to mention things like Weight Watchers, because I've never really agreed with those kind of models anyway. And, having to buy the food and that sort of thing, and having these, sins and all of that, which I suppose is part of it. They're trying to say, you don't have to cut things out, but there is a balance. And I might talk about that differently if I had real weight problems over the years. I think for me, I always knew if I was perhaps not, maybe a little bit. See, I lose weight if I'm stressed, but I put it on, I think, if I'm not necessarily comfortable. But I definitely can tell with my clothes, thinking what I'm trying to say. So particularly trousers or something that's got a zip or a button, and it's around that kind of middle area that I notice it more. So I kind of use that a little bit more as a gauge, because I think you're right with the scales. It doesn't necessarily depict the true story, because I run a lot now, so I know that I just have to feel calves and my thighs to know that I've got more muscle there than I had done, say, 2 years ago. So that is going to weigh more than fat, isn't it? So, for me to weigh the scales and be a stone heavier and think I need to lose some weight, but actually it's not a fat aspect, it's a muscle aspect. So yeah, I find it really fascinating as to, that gauging it. But I think just how you feel is something to really tap into and be aware of. And I think quite often people are so busy, particularly women, most people having a job and then they've got kids to look after, and they tend to sort of, provide for the household in that sense, food provision, cleaning, that sort of thing. They're so busy as well that I think, you kind of lose the ability almost to tap into your body. And it's kind of so important.
Definitely, yeah. And another thing I wanted to say that was a big light bulb for me, obviously, after I kind of gone through the dieting cycle, is knowing that actually our bodies are always on our side and they're always trying to keep us safe. So the whole weight fluctuating and these cravings I was experiencing and all this preoccupation with food, knowing that actually that was my body's way of just trying to keep me safe and well, was like, but at the time I was like, but why? Because I shouldn't be eating this, or why do I put on weight when I'm trying to diet? So, but it's like our bodies are like, look, just, I'm good if you can just, almost like saying, lean back a little bit and just let our bodies like tell us and lead us to those choices. So that was a really good, I suppose, penny drop for me again, and something that, I still touch on now and just think, it's really good. Just, our bodies are always there for us really and on our side, even though a lot of people think they might be kind of really angry at their body or, that kind of relationship with their body, not happy with it. But it's just responding to what we do, what we give it and what we do for it really. So I think that's quite good. Yeah.
Definitely. I think not letting the mind take control and having that balance between what you think and what you feel, and, knowing that really the mind and the body should work together.
Absolutely. In harmony. Yeah. Kind of getting that balance right. Yeah.
So we are recording this towards the end of another year. How's it gone? And we're leading up to Christmas and New Year, or the festive season, should I say, because no matter what you celebrate, that, it's kind of known typically as a time for indulgence, sweet treats, lots of kind of full fatty type foods. We've got less light in the day, it's colder, so we're probably not getting outside quite as much. There's a lot of factors that kind of go into this sort of season, if you like, that could potentially impact, what we eat, what we weigh. So if let's sort of talk a little bit about what's the best way to approach our food and sort of this season in general from that intuitive eating point of view.
Yeah. Okay. I think the first thing I'll touch on, Anna, is what I notice with people I work with and when I was dieting, because this season absolutely can trigger dieting mentality and worry and anxiety around food, because more likely when you're getting together with friends, family, food's usually involved around this time of year, and it can create a lot of worry from clients about what to do, and they'll really trying to control their eating habits around those day occasions. The biggest thing I always say, there's a couple of things we can touch on here, but I always say to try and encourage people to lean away from depriving themselves or trying to do low-fat versions of things, or trying to be really preoccupied of that, and just really allow yourself to enjoy it. And there's this thing I like to say is that this season can kind of come in with ease and it can leave with ease without it being kind of this big thing that can trigger things, and it's really here to be enjoyed. I think that what we talked about the hunger scale, it's so just kind of a brief introduction to it for those who maybe not have come across it. So it's, and if anyone listening wants a copy of it, I can obviously send that over, that's no problem. But it's basically a scale between 1 and 10, 1 being absolutely starving, 10 being like you could almost get sick, you're just absolutely stuffed. And then the kind of between 5 to 7 in the middle, the kind of green is kind of the colour coded, that green area is just really neutral. So you're not hungry, you're not full. it's kind of aiming to stay in between. Now, our bodies naturally send us signals to keep us in the middle of this between, say, 3 and 7, 3 and 8, something like that. So I always say you can always use this scale, whatever you're eating, whether it is a salad, whether it is a bacon sandwich, whether it is your Christmas dinner. You can always use it. And I think it's a really good tool to bring it into this season. So it's always there, but also allowing yourself to get to maybe the 9, maybe the 10 sometimes, and use it more rather than intuitive eating is all about moving away from judgment and more like, okay, right, I'm at a 9 or 10. Let's get curious. How do I feel? But also, when I'm here, how does it make my choices in future comes to say how long will it be now till I eat again? And just kind of get curious about it, like, oh, I'm really full. So then I might go back to 3 or 4 in a couple of hours. But just so there's no judgment around it and just make it be kind of really fluid, whether you get to a 1 or a 10. Just knowing that, okay, let's get interesting. How's my body respond to when I'm at those points, rather than it being judgment,
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That kind of...
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I think as well, when you went through this in quite some detail in the workshop that you presented, what I thought was really interesting is that, and this is quite difficult probably for people that work 9 to 5 or they work sitting shifts, and their break times and their lunch times are kind of forced on them, and they might not actually be hungry when there's the opportunity to have food. And I feel quite lucky that I work from home. I don't have a particularly set timetable. As long as the work gets done for my clients, it doesn't really matter whether it's 6 a.m. in the morning, 6 p.m. at night. So what I've started doing a little bit more so is waiting until I'm more so towards the end of that hunger scale, and I can feel my stomach rumbling, and there's almost that, I can sense that emptiness that's there. But I don't, as soon as I feel it, I don't go and get something to eat. I'll wait a little bit longer until, okay, yeah, you are hungry. You're not just fancying something. So I just, before we started recording, our session was at 3 p.m, wasn't it? I had my lunch at 2:30, which for some people that might be quite late. But then I had my breakfast at 8:30, I think it was this morning, which is quite about 2 hours later than I would normally have breakfast. But I sort of, I'm definitely more in tune with when my body needs refueling, and I try not to sort of stick to the set times now. It's a little bit more difficult when my partner's daughter's here, because obviously she is hungry earlier on in the evening, so we generally eat earlier when she's with us than when we're just on ourselves. But yeah, I mean, and another thing which is quite apt, because it's it's close to Christmas time. I made some Christmas puddings a few weeks ago, some homemade Christmas puddings, and what I thought was going to be just a couple turned out to be about 6. So we had them in the freezer, and yesterday I said, oh, shall we have a Christmas pudding? And I said to him, I don't want, they're only little, like so big. And I said, I don't want half, just give me a quarter. He gave me more than a quarter, full of custard. And I thought, I can't eat this. So I knew my body was getting full, sensed that it was getting full. Could have continued eating, but I thought no, because then I just won't sleep properly. So the rest of it's in the fridge at the moment. I'll probably have it tonight now. But yeah, I think just being aware of how your body feels, but also if you do overeat a little bit or undereat a little bit, sort of what happens next, so that you can kind of, judge for yourself. But yeah, once you get into that kind of awareness, it's quite easy to spot, I think, but it's getting there.
You're so right. And I think common things that come up this year, this time of year, is, say if there's a week where you might be eating out 2 or 3 times a week, then people might try to, and I definitely did this, kind of control it in a way that, right, I'll skip breakfast, have a light lunch, save my calories till the evening, or you've had a really heavy meal, right, tomorrow I'm going to skip breakfast, just trying to control it from a mental level. But this is where, when I touched on earlier about leaning back, and these are just so clever, like they'll tell us, like that they absolutely will, about how they're feeling from what we've given it. So I think it's I feel like just relaxing around it rather than trying to control it, because again, with our bodies being so clever, they'll know when that control's there, and they'll send strong cravings out if they've been deprived, or they'll store things if they think, oh, I'm not going to get breakfast. Do you know, it's that kind of thing. So it is that kind of stepping back, really, I think is a nice way to approach this kind of season.
Yeah, I think you've reminded me of something now. I went to Barcelona the weekend before last for a journaling festival. So there was the continental breakfast, and breakfast was included. So I've got this continental breakfast, and I quite like a continental breakfast with the hams and the cheese and the fresh rolls. So I had that on my plate, and then there was all this fresh fruit, so melon and orange and kiwis. So I had a little bit of that, and then they've got pastries as well. And I just wanted something of everything. And on the first day, I had something. And afterwards, I was just like, I don't really think I can walk to the journaling place now. And I was sitting down all day, so I wasn't getting any exercise. So I kind of, stepped back a little bit the next morning. And I think every morning probably following that, because we were there for, four mornings, I had a little bit less every day.
Yeah, and it probably felt that, this is probably quite good. It feels good when I've done that. Yeah. Oh, no, that's good. Another little tool I've helped. This one lady in particular, just reminding when you talked about being on holiday and generally on holiday, obviously, there's lots of foods that we'd like to try, and that's all part of being on holiday, isn't it? But I remember this lady in particular going on an all-inclusive holiday. She used to always go every year, and she'd go on the kind of diet before, let it all go when she was there, and then feel awful when she got back. So we worked on a program before she went of introducing the foods that she was going to eat and really like on holiday before she went, and practice a hunger scale. And it's almost like I kept talking to her about bringing it down off the pedestal. So it's like she was dieting and like leading up to this big all-inclusive holiday where she'd let go. And then once we started to introduce these foods before she went and just relax around those foods, she came back just feeling so much better, and feeling better on holiday, but also after. So it's just kind of making this really nice kind of fluid approach to it, rather than it being a big thing that should always, it's just when you're kind of in this cycle like I was really, but just kind of breaking that cycle, just kind of break it down a little bit. And it can make such a difference to how you approach holidays and food. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, actually, because I think that's typical of particularly women, isn't it? They starve themselves before they go, thinking that they're going to create some space for the extra food and, the local cocktails and that sort of thing, which are still full of calories as well, aren't they? These cocktails and that we have. But yeah, introducing them does kind of take away that bright, shiny object that you just have to have, because you've kind of already had a little taste of it, so you don't gonna crave it as much. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And actually, you can enjoy it much more as well when you're kind of responding to when your hunger and fullness, but also satisfaction. You can just enjoy it more. Sometimes when we've deprived ourselves of something that we really like, we often, I remember doing it, like you might eat it really quickly, you might eat more of it than you actually wanted. And it's like, oh, actually, really, I don't know if I enjoyed that as much. When it's more, when you kind of approach it more calmly, you can really enjoy it much more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I agree with that, because I'm not really one for snacking, and I am one of these. I've never really, my mum and dad didn't really let me have sweet treats and things. We never went to the sweet shop or anything like that when I was little, which I am very grateful for. So I never really had those cravings for sweet things. I was always more of a Bombay mix or, something like that, something that was a little bit savoury. Whereas, people that, like my partner now and his daughter, they love the sweet, they love cake and things like that. And part of me is like, stop eating all this sweet stuff. You need to kind of learn these things at an early age so that you know how to nutritiously eat, like, and you're grown up. But I try not to sort of make that a bad thing, particularly if it's me that wants to stay away from it, fine, that's me. It's not necessarily, I don't think that I deprive myself, it's just that I've never had an element of that particularly in my life. Ice cream and things like that when we go on holiday. And now when I go around, it's kind of the opposite now. My mum always makes a homemade apple crumble or a meringue or, something like that. So we always have a pudding now, but not so much when I was younger. But occasionally I do crave like a little chocolate bar or something like that in the afternoon. So now I just think, well, if you're craving it, just have it, because I know it's not a constant. It's just, it might be one day out of a week. So just have it, don't deprive yourself of it, because if you do, then it's potentially affecting other aspects of us emotionally, mentally, whatever.
When you deprive, then it can build up, and all of a sudden you're in this, deprivation cycle where you might be overeating and binging on that. A few of those bars might be.
Yeah, I think for me as well, the thing is not to eat or drink actually too late at night, because that affects how I sleep. Even though, I don't watch a great deal of television, but it's great to just have a little nibble while you're watching something if you're into it. It's almost like part of the experience. But yeah, if it's anything past sort of 8 o'clock, I don't really like to eat much after that, because I know it can affect my sleep.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, that's a real kind of inside out approach, isn't it? Because you've learned that. It's not like, oh, I mustn't. It's just like, oh, actually, it doesn't make me feel good. The sleep is impacted. So, yeah.
Yeah. So are there any ways that people can sort of maybe cook things slightly differently, or, have different things on the menu, without sort of, saying we definitely don't want this, but is there any kind of just little tweaks that they can possibly make that would help them to, just maintain the healthier aspect of festivities?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I suppose I always lean away from labelling food, and the eating approach does, labelling food as good and bad and healthy, unhealthy, kind of making it feel kind of very morally wrong if I eat something. So the way I always approach festive season is, to really kind of try and lean away from that, and enjoy whatever recipe you're doing, whatever it suggests to put in there. I would say, I suppose I'm just really hyper aware from just my experience in working with clients that when we start to kind of alter maybe say traditional dishes around Christmas time to try and be good, or maybe it's like a low fat or a bit better, it, our bodies can feel it, our minds can feel it, but it's not actually. And it's just, I'm always aware that I just don't want any sort of like triggering of deprivation or diet mentality, because it can really, then it comes to New Year and then it can really kickstart this whole dieting, weight loss kind of body image thing. So I'm a real big believer of relaxing around that and enjoying your Christmas dinners, the snacks. Again, I think the hunger scales are really, really important to keep, I suppose, at the forefront of your mind. But yeah, I suppose coming from when I first a personal trainer and guiding people on their nutrition, I was very much in that dieting area. And I did go down that you can make this healthier by doing this. You could tweak. And it kind of almost, if you're in that circle, that kind of cycle of dieting or in that mentality, then it really can kind of keep you in it. So
yeah, make it perpetual.
Yeah. And like I said, like your body and mind will sense that and feel it. So I would say, so try not to deviate too much. Enjoy what's in front of you when you're eating out or on Christmas Day. And even when we kind of move into, say, January, as we know, it's such a popular time of year where people may have indulged a bit over the festive season and feel not as firing on all cylinders like they normally do. But when that food isn't around, I always think your body, again, it will naturally just come back to the way it was. It doesn't need that kind of extreme forcing it to do it. I think it will do it when all the food's gone, disappeared eventually after a few weeks into January. So yeah, I think that's what I would say really. Just allowing the seeds just to kind of come and go without any kind of drama around it, let's say. Yeah.
I suppose something that popped into my mind when you were talking then as well is, even if we go but really kind of way back to our evolution when we were cavemen, our diet was obviously very different then, but the same thing could apply that we might catch a deer or something to feed on, but then not have anything like that for a few days again. So it was kind of you always sort of take what's there at the time, and obviously it's not going to be as extreme now, but the bodies would still find a way to kind of get back to that natural weight still, and work in ways and conserve energy in other parts of our body systems. We're very complex, aren't we? So we just have to kind of trust in ourselves and our bodies that we know sort of what we're doing. And I think everybody knows when they eat too much or they drink too much, but sometimes the emotional aspect of it is kind of running away with us. And I think you sort of talk about, allowing our bodies to lead the way a little bit more so, and, getting in touch with the body more so than the emotion, and sort of going on holiday is a typical example of that, I think, because the emotion is attached to the all-inclusive, on the cruise ship, captain's evening, when, everything's just on tap, wherever it is that you want. And taking that emotional aspect of it and just leaning more so into the body.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I say to clients around this time of year is, especially people that might be kind of worried about that kind of gaining weight and kind of keeping control around food, is I kind of say, see all these gatherings and all this delicious food, just see it as an opportunity. It's such a brilliant opportunity to practice connecting to your own hunger, fullness, satisfaction cues, and practicing, okay, I've eaten that, right, how does that make me feel? How's my body after that? How am I the next day? It's just seeing it all as, right, brilliant opportunities, like a buffet table, right, great opportunity, not like oh gosh, what am I going to eat? It's like, oh, this is great. I can practice what feels good for me, and kind of really moving away from the shoulds around things, like, oh, we should probably go to the gym because I need to burn more calories because I'm eating. I'm all about, right, if you want to get outside because that feels good, moving your body after dinner feels good. So it's just really, you're right, it's kind of regaining that trust in our bodies. That's the key around it, I think. Yeah
As well, what you enjoy. I mean, I quite often, my lunch is a salad. I love what I call a mega salad, and I really enjoy the taste of it. I like the mix of a sort of hummus and feta cheese, which I know are quite fatty, both of them, with nuts like sunflower seeds, and with lettuce and tomato. I just put all sorts of stuff in there, and I love it. Sometimes I know I fill the plate there's too, even though it's a salad, there's too much in there. Then afterwards, my stomach, and again, I can feel in my stomach that I've eaten too much. But that kind of food always fills me up more so than, maybe having something like a beans and cheese on toast or something like that. Perhaps. And the other thing that I started to really notice is in the morning, if I have something with eggs, I'm a lot fuller for longer. So for me, sometimes if I stop at my parents', and a little bit older now, and they love the croissants and scones, wherever you come from, in the morning, and so I'll have that with them with some fruit and that. So it's it's still a little bit of a mixture, but I'm starving within 2 hours, so I kind of know what foods fuel me better as well throughout the day. And I think that that's only come with time and with trying different things, and again just being aware of how body feels. Sort of, it's almost, I don't know if I can feel it from here, like my throat, my esophagus, is that here, all the way down to my stomach. And I can also tell if I've eaten the wrong thing by bowel movements.
Yeah, it absolutely can tell you a lot, definitely. Yeah. But no, it is lovely. It sounds like you really have, you're probably more intuitive than maybe when we met, than maybe you realised, because when you keep saying feeling, and that's a really good sign there. If you're saying, oh, because it feels better, not because it's like, oh, I should or I shouldn't, or it's good or bad, that feeling aspect is there. So that's really nice to hear.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I think the only thing that's a bit of a downfall for me, you mentioned about going out and that and eating out. Sometimes some of the desserts look absolutely delicious on some menu. I kind of get drawn into the fact that if other people are having the dessert, then I'll have one as well. But I do know that I'm full and I don't really need one, but I kind of get drawn into it. So I think it's also been a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, like stand up fees. Don't get kind of drawn into it.
I know. And then in times when we do it again, it's like that non-judgment approach to it, it's curious. That's great. I enjoyed it with my friends and family, like so it's just kind of moving away from the judgment around it. But I understand, definitely.
And it's reframing that, isn't it? Moving away from it. I suppose from what you've just said there, I could reframe that and say, okay, well, I perhaps would feel a little bit better if I hadn't had it, but it's enhanced the experience with my friends because I've enjoyed the dessert with them. And just leave it at that.
Exactly. And your body will respond. It will give you cues the next day as to, okay, how does that feel in my body and what kind of breakfast does it want? Do you know, it's that, yeah. But it doesn't have to be like from the mind, oh, well, I've had dessert last night, so this morning I'm going to, do you know, it's just more of a, yeah, relaxing around.
Skip breakfast. What's your thoughts on, just very quickly, I know this is not a question that we sort of talked about beforehand, but what are your thoughts on the fasting? Because I've spoken to some people that recommend it, but then I've also spoken to people that say you don't have to overthink it. If you wake up one morning, for example, and you think, oh, I'm going to try some fasting, that feels like the right thing to do, then just do it, but don't kind of plan it. I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah. So interesting you've said that, because I just did a post last week about it, about intermittent fasting and intuitive eating, because I get asked questions about it as well. The biggest thing, the difference I would say between them both is intermittent fasting and fasting can be kind of in windows, can't it? It can be like, okay, so eat between whatever it is, 8 or 6 during the day. So from an intuitive eating approach, this wouldn't at all be connecting to your natural hunger and fullness cues. Like, it can trigger all sorts of things. So the intuitive eating approach is very much, you wake up in the morning, if it's before 8 o'clock, but you're on a 1 or 2 on the scale, your body's saying, I want food, so I'm going to eat now. But if you start waiting till kind of past that, to 8 to 9, it really can trigger that kind of deprivation, and then it can set off cravings. And really, like in a diet did, like for me, and obviously with clients as well, there is a bit of a contradiction between fasting and intuitive eating. And that's probably the main difference, I would say, that it's from the outside in, it's like a schedule, whereas intuitive eating is much more fluid and much more you're responding to what your body naturally wants in the moment. Having said that, I have worked with people that have done intuitive eating in the past, and initially for different reasons really, and have found benefit from it, but really it's never been a long-term approach for them. That's been my experience. It's been a short-term, whatever it might have been, a reason for doing it. But generally once they've done it, they'll be kind of searching for a more, right, okay, I need something that's more long-term and manageable for me and my lifestyle really. But it's really interesting you brought that, because I've just done a post on it, because there are differences, but there would be quite a bit of a contrast between fasting and intuitive eating really. Makes sense.
Yeah, because I suppose regardless of the reasons why you would maybe do fasting, you are at some point during that phase ignoring the hunger feelings and the fact that, you know, your body does need food every so often.
It's really well, I remember when I was very much kind of out of the dieting cycle, but I read some research, or I can't remember, it was quite a while ago now, but it was something about not eating past 7 o'clock in the evening. And I remember it was so funny. I said, right, I'll do it this evening. And honestly, during the day, I was all of a sudden thinking, I need to stop eating by 7. And it was just like affecting my choices throughout the day. I felt like I ate past my fullness at dinner time. So I suppose everyone's very individual, and I was just kind of out of my dieting. So there could have been, I suppose, little things that still could trigger that mentality. But I think if anyone's in the slightest kind of vulnerable to that, and they go into a fasting approach to food, then it definitely can trigger those dieting thoughts and restrictive thoughts really, with almost without even knowing it. So that was interesting. So I just thought, obviously that's not, I was just kind of experimenting really, but it definitely changed my eating throughout the day, even before I'd even done it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you just said something there as well about experimenting, and you've mentioned quite a lot about just being curious about what feels are, you know, what the food is, what is kind of brought up in the emotions as well as the physical feelings, and the hunger scale, and keeping a kind of a diary as well about what you eat are all kind of helpful tools, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think one thing I will just say to finish on the hunger scale is, again, people can think it's like a hunger scale diet almost, like, oh, I must eat when I'm at 3 and I must finish at a 7. But it really isn't that at all. It's really kind of keeping that fluid approach. Like, For example, you mentioned earlier, like say if someone's got a long meeting and they haven't had a chance to eat, and they drop down to the 1 or 2. But what I often say is, if you know you're going in, say, a long meeting, or maybe you've got home and you're going out for dinner and it's not being served till 8, but you really are hungry now, like it's really okay to eat, even if you're not actually 100% hungry before a meeting, but actually by eating now, it's going to be good for the long term, really, almost like planning ahead.
Yeah.
So it's like you might not just be at that perfect time to eat, but actually if I don't, there's a risk here, I'm going to drop down really low and then overeat after the meeting, or it's like an act of self-care, really. Yeah. It's been good with that too.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, because particularly for me on a Tuesday evening, we go, myself and my partner, we go running. And there's 2 different groups that we kind of alternate between on Tuesdays. One is just up the road that we can get to within 5 minutes on foot. And the other one, we tend to have to drive somewhere, and it's generally a bit slower. So with the second group, I'm always very conscious that I'm not going to be eating as early as I would normally. So I always have a snack, even though I'm not hungry. And sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, but I always have a snack then before going running, because I know if I don't, I'm going to start feeling hungry during the run. Mm-hmm. And that's not sort of good for energy levels or anything for me anyway, when I'm doing that, vigorous exercise. So I kind of almost, keep myself at a level, I guess, by having a little nibble. And then I know that I'm not going to be absolutely starving and 10 when I'm ready for my main meal. It's more like a 7 or an 8.
Yeah. So it's totally great to plan ahead, absolutely, and fuel your body well. Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot there. I think there's a lot of takeaways that people have learned, and we'll share the hunger scale and some other bits and bobs in the show notes. And so where's the best place for people to reach you? And then also, if you want to just, because you've got a free intuitive eating assessment, haven't you? And then you've got various groups and one-to-ones, and you do different workshops and things like that at other wellbeing events. So yeah, how can people reach you, and sort of what's planned for 2025?
Yeah, so on social media, I'm active mostly on Instagram, I would say, but I am on Facebook and LinkedIn, and my email address is on my website. That's another great place to connect with me, on my website. So www.aineharkin.com. And there are 2 really great resources on the website. And the first thing, as you just mentioned, it's an intuitive eating assessment scale. So you can download that, and that will give you a little snapshot right there and then as to how close you are to being an intuitive eater. And it's something I use a lot with my clients too. It's almost like a check-in to see how clients are doing in terms of moving away from dieting and restriction to eating more intuitively. So that's a really good tool. And there's also a 5-day free training, which is you'll get emails into your inbox. You just sign up for free. You'll get emails to your inbox every morning. And it's just a nice little introduction to intuitive eating. It's got meditations in there, and just lots of little, really good nuggets of information just to get you started, really, like a little introduction. So that's the best places. There's also, a free consultation form to fill out. So if you want to call with me, 30 minutes free, you're welcome to. I've just got a little calendar on there. You can book in anytime. And in terms of 2025, at the moment, there's lots of little things kind of coming up and a few changes happening in the new year. But I really plan to continue working with my clients on that one-to-one level and the counselling side, but also still personal training with my one-to-one clients too. So lots of little things happening, but really focusing on still working with clients one-to-one as much as I can.
Yeah, I think I like that one-to-one experience, and lots of different ways of working with people from a professional and a personal point of view. I think it's just you get more out of it. Groups are great because I think you can share stories, you can share what's worked, what hasn't worked. But for me, I definitely do get more from a one-to-one relationship.
You're right. Yeah, that one-to-one relationship is brilliant, and people can share more, and there's lots of insights that can be had. So yeah, the one-to-one's brilliant. Yeah. Excellent.
So it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you today. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to sort of share before we wrap up?
I think, it's been so nice to speak to you, and thank you for inviting me to come along. And as we're coming up to that time of year, just wishing everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. But thanks again for having me. It's been lovely to chat with you, Anna.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to today's Writing with Purpose podcast. Having conversations with fellow writers or adventure enthusiasts brings two of my biggest loves in life together, writing and nature connection. I've been a copywriter and content creator for 23 years, but my passion is writing for wellbeing, and I'm on a mission to share the benefits that putting pen to paper has for personal wellness with as many people as possible. If you want to learn more about writing for your wellbeing and journaling techniques, please connect with me in my Facebook group, Journaling with Anna.